Very good evening and welcome to this evening's Cabinet meeting on the 15th of April, Tuesday the 15th of April. My name is Councillor David Thomas, Leader of the Council, and welcome to this particular meeting. For those in the meeting, I would remind you that we are not expecting a fire alarm, so should the alarm sound, please exit via the nearest exit and gather in the car park next to the library. And if I could request that all mobile phones and electronic devices are turned to silent. Please note that we are using hybrid meeting arrangements with officers and councillors who are not members of the Cabinet having the option to join the meeting via Zoom, and we are also live streaming this meeting via the Council's YouTube channel to encourage more active engagement in our public meetings. Can I please remind everyone to use their microphones when speaking and turn them off when finished. Anyone attending the meeting remotely must use their raise hand function when they wish to speak and to declare any interest at the appropriate time. If anyone attending the meeting remotely loses connection, the meeting will continue and you will have the option to follow the meeting via the YouTube live stream. Thank you very much indeed. So we have apologies, please.
Chairman, I have apologies from Councillor By and Councillor Jackie Thomas.
Thank you very much indeed. Minutes to confirm as a correct record. The minutes of the Cabinet meeting on the 18th of March. Happy to move that from the chair.
Happy to second, Chairman.
Thanking you. All those in favour, please indicate.
It's unanimous, Chair.
Thank you. Disclosure of interests. If any member has a pecuniary or a non-pecuniary interest, if you could please declare that now. Thank you. None noted. There are no urgent items this evening, so we'll move straight on to the Brokenbury Solar Farm and Councillor Chris Lewis.
Thank you very much indeed, Chairman. Brokenbury Solar Farm. I think if I can set the record straight right at the beginning, that I think we're all supportive that we want a solar farm at Brokenbury. And it's got planning permission, Mr. Chairman. And if there is a solar farm at Brokenbury, it will contribute to Torbay's net zero target, reducing carbon footprint of over 18,000 tonnes of CO2 over 40 years, which is a good news story for Torbay. It shows that we take climate change seriously. The question I think here tonight is the question is how do we deliver the solar farm? Do Torbay Council deliver it, or do we look elsewhere? If Torbay Council deliver it, we're looking at borrowing up to £2,750,000. We're looking at maintaining the site and taking the full risk of building the site and running the site. Do we, as Torbay Council, have the expertise in building solar farms, indeed running solar farms, or monitoring, maintaining the situation? The answer is no. And another point of us as Torbay Council running the solar farm, do we have the staff with the expertise? No, we don't. Are our staff at the moment involved in major projects like Union Square, like the Pavilion, like Old Way, like Victoria Square? Yes, they are. And I think we have to be very careful that we don't burden them with more schemes and take our eye off the major schemes going forward. Also, I might add, Mr. Chairman, that we don't have a very good record of developing and delivering on time and on budget. Hence, we brought in the Wilmot Dixon Milligan, who are experts at delivering major projects. An alternative way of delivering the solar farm, and it was put forward recently by the Pennon Group, which includes South West Water. And of course, they have the expertise, they've run solar farms elsewhere, and they've had similar projects. The scheme before you is to lease the land to them. They will then refund the costs we've already spent on obtaining the planning permission. They would pay an annual market rent for the site. And on this option, Torbay Council would not have to borrow a penny for the solar farm to be delivered. More importantly, it would be a risk-free project going forward. The risk would then lie with South West Water and not Torbay Council. As I've said in the past, we have taken risks which have come back to bite us. Let's learn from our mistakes and let others borrow the money and take the risks. Mr. Chairman, I believe the best option for Torbay Council is the recommendation set out in the report section 3, that the previous decisions be rescinded and that 3.3 be implemented. I will read that out so it's clear for the members of the Cabinet and those viewing online. And that is that subject to 2, which is the rescinding of previous decisions, above authority be delegated to the Director of Finance in consultation with the Cabinet Member for Place Development and Economic Growth to agree and finalise the detailed lease terms in line with an independent market valuation and enter into a long lease for the land edge read set out in Appendix 1 to the submitted report. I propose this recommendation, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, Councillor. A reminder that this is a decision that goes to Council, so it is a recommendation from the Cabinet to Council, and I would also advise that Councillor Jackie Thomas is now with us in the virtual room, which means she'll be able to engage in debate, but she will not be able to vote at any item on tonight's agenda. Move on to a seconder, Councillor Billings.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just wanted to recap for the benefit of members and all those listening into this meeting as to how we've got here. We've got here because the previous administration had an aspiration to increase the council's efforts towards achieving net zero. And along that journey, it proposed 2 solar farms, one of them located at Brokenbury. However, the implementation has been thus far fraught with problems. The first proposal for planning permission saw the solar panels themselves being located right adjacent to Bridge Road, and an alternative area for mitigation being located towards the middle of the site. That original proposal was refused at planning permission stage. It was very frustrating because that proposal caused a situation where a large amount of archaeological works were done because it was the field next to the road where there was a Bronze Age settlement. And this information was known to the council and the administration previously at the time the planning permission was originally sought. We then moved forward and we've got a subsequent application for planning permission came forward, and that's broadly what we've got outlined in front of us. It located the panels much more sensibly towards the centre of the site, with the mitigation land being proposed closer to the prime public viewpoints on Bridge Road. However, that application still had holes in it, in that the continuous perimeter fence didn't join up the existing boundary structures to the new gate, and hence that was why recently during the term of this administration there was a further revision to ensure that the site was fully secure from access, for example travellers or those others seeking to access the site. I think this background's helpful because it touches on the points that Councillor Lewis made in relation to whether the council themselves are best placed to deliver schemes such as this. I would have thought, for example, they probably point in the opposite direction. I look also in relation to the harbour car park, where the works were effectively the bolting on of a stairwell to provide an access point to the harbour car park. And I look at the efforts that this administration has gone through, Mr. Chairman, in order to ensure that a scheme that was delivered under a previous administration was fault-free. I'm pleased we're finally getting there, but it's been a significant component of work. That's highlighted to me the amount of skills that exist within the private sector, which we've been able to procure through Wilmot, Dixon and Milligan, our development partner. But realistically, with the best will in the world, the council don't have as our day job delivering solar farms. South West Water already have a portfolio of solar farms and are more familiar in this area than we are. And all of that, I think, could be overcome, perhaps, had the finances been different. We talk in the report about the PPA, the Power Purchase Agreement. And, Mr. Chairman, I liken it a little bit to if one was to go shopping to buy a car. You wouldn't tell the salesman you really wanted the car. You'd spent some money on seat covers and then seek to negotiate the price. That wouldn't be a good strategy. And as I speak, I'm not aware that we have a written down PPA agreement for the unit price that South West Water would have bought the power for from the council, nor did we have that in place cast iron in writing at the time the council spent a very considerable amount of money on this planning permission. Now, perhaps if things had been different, perhaps if the political priorities of the previous administration had been to have got a robust agreement in place with South West Water about the future sale of the electricity produced, we could look to a situation where, notwithstanding all of the problems I'd described earlier, it might be in the best interest for Torbay Council to build this out. But that's not where we were, that's not what we've got. And so we're in a situation where, having spent the money, we're now seeking to negotiate that agreement, which, with the best will in the world, is that bit more difficult now than what it would have been previously right at the inception. So my view, and I say this as a ward councillor representing the area, I'd like to see a solar farm delivered there. I think it's a sensible location right next to a significant use of electricity, which is the sewage treatment farm. I think it's sensible that this is delivered through the private sector. I want to touch on to whether it's possible to accommodate some of the views of other users. It would have been nice if the council had been able to deliver it itself, if we weren't in this situation where an agreement to sell the power to South West Water had never been agreed on day one, to have been able to develop this, and at a later date, once it was built, to have looked to see whether the mitigation area could fulfil two uses, both as a mitigation area and also for archery. Now, we don't have that information before us yet. We do know that land is needed for mitigation. It would have been nice to have been in a situation where we could have provided an area for future use for the archery club. I hope that South West Water will be able to do that. But I want to be clear, this isn't a bare area where we're only developing panels on half the site and the other half of it's got no clear value. It's needed to mitigate the ecological impact of the panels themselves, and so therefore that really will need some work between the South West Water and also the archery club to see how those two uses of ecology and archery could live together suitably. And so I'd like to second this. It's not where I would have liked to have been. I'd much rather of us to have had on day one an agreement with South West Water. I think that would have been the more prudent approach, but it's not the position we've inherited as an administration. So this is the best deal on the table as I see it, Chairman.
Thank you very much indeed, Councillor. Move across to our Financial Director, Mr. Coe. Anything further to add, sir?
Not really, Chair. I think it's been outlined by councillors. I mean, from a finance point of view, what you get on the recommendation in here is certainty. Neither one of these options are going to be a significant impact in terms of income to the budget. With the certainty, you take out the risk. The option about self-delivery, there are risks attached to that. And obviously the interest rates in terms of any council borrowing still remains high, which adds to the narrow margin between the two options. So from my point of view, in terms of minimising risk and the certainty, I think it's a preferred option.
Thank you very much indeed. Move outside of the Cabinet at the first opportunity, which would ordinarily be to invite Shadow Cabinet member Councillor Fox. I understand he can't make it this evening, so Councillor Long will respond in his absence. Thank you, Councillor Long.
Yes, thank you very much. Councillor Fox is away and sadly can't be with us. And it's interesting that we're almost halfway through the term of this administration, and there are only 2 items on this agenda, both of which originated from the previous administration, which would suggest an administration which is run out of steam, if there is any steam to begin with, which might explain the rather negative seconding by Councillor Billings. The item before us is an ideological proposal. Councillor Lewis has mentioned before that in his view it's not the council's business to be building solar farms, which is rather at odds with the government. If you look at the website of Great British Energy, it is very clear that the government expects local councils to be involved with energy projects. This reasoning is the same with housing, where the council believes that it shouldn't be building council housing, and there is a real risk that the government will view this council in a negative light, which has real implications for local government reform. The recommended proposal before us is actually a worse financial deal, I understand, for the council than if the council developed the solar farm itself. That is what we have been given to understand from briefings we have received on this item. And there is also, under this proposal, no community dividend, which formed initially the initial proposal from this item, which I know that the previous ward member had got as part of the deal as a good ward councillor. If the ward councillors feel that there are no community groups worthy of a community dividend, then this could extend to the wider Brixham area. The community dividend element is included in the proposal for the proposed solar farm in Torquay, so it does beg the question why the Brixham end of the bay is losing out. Another question that I'm aware of from the community is why South West Water is being given the lease for all of the second field. There are questions that come from the community about what proposals South West Water might have for the site. And as has been raised already, there are concerns from community groups such as Brixham Archers or maybe other community groups who would like to have community access to that site. This administration had nearly 2 years to sort that out, but nothing yet, and no formal agreement as I can see for that access. This report is also very thin, not much of a business case. Much is made of risk to the council. As a layman, I'm not aware of solar farms being a particular risk of negative incidents. It's not something you see in the media very much, so I'd appreciate it if the Cabinet member who proposed the item could provide 3 examples of incidents at solar farms which have affected electricity supply and caused a risk to councils supplying them. That would be much appreciated. This is very much a worse deal for Torbay residents for all the reasons I've highlighted, so there's only one response really, which is shame on you.
Councillor Cowell.
Thank you, Chair. And I don't know where to start on this one, really. Councillor Long has already referenced this being driven by ideology, and I think it is pure, blatant political ideology of that the private sector are kings. And I think we've seen plenty of examples where that's not the case. British Steel could be a good example. But returning to Brokenbury, when the agenda item was published for this, I rushed to the Part 2 appendix, which is where we would expect to see the detail of the business case. I mentioned in a conversation with the Chief Executive recently that if somebody walked into my office with this as a business case, I would have sent them away with a flea in their ear. There is no risk analysis. The report refers to risks. They're not identified. Where is the professional detail of the risks? What percentage risks do they represent? Is it 5% risk? Is it a 95% risk? What are the mitigations for those risks? What's the service level agreement with the supplier of the equipment in terms of mitigating those risks? Where is that in this report? Not one of you around this cabinet table tonight are able to identify those risks from within this report. And then we turn to the comparison between the PPA arrangement and the lease arrangement. Firstly, the lease arrangement is on the entirety of the two fields. The PPA arrangement was the income from the panels themselves, which left the other adjacent part of the two fields available for other activities. And it's been referenced about the ecological impact and mitigation that's required as a result of the planning consent. I'm not aware of any archery activity in the UK that has a negative impact to the extent that this would not facilitate Brixham Archers, who are about to make, well, are homeless. A valued sporting club in Torbay are on a knife edge. They could actually close. They could actually leave Torbay and take their membership with them. That would be another detrimental impact as a result of the failure of this administration to work with Brixham Archers and actually a total disregard for Brixham Archers and a reflection of the attitude to sport in general. The other element of this, of course, is that the report refers to the independent market valuation that is yet to be taken. So how can you have a business case, as flimsy as it is, based on something that we don't know about? So you're going to make a decision on the unknown. Councillor Long has already referred to the lack of community dividend, both in terms of access, but also the financial. And it leads the question, if this council is so much in a position that it's not capable of delivering a solar farm, then I take it we will be asking the NHS to build the one at Nightingale Park. And we all know the answer to that. They will not be building a solar farm at Nightingale Park. If we haven't got the capability of delivering Brokenbury for the reasons outlined by members of the Cabinet tonight, then we must be about to abandon Nightingale Park because we're not capable of delivering it. I actually think that that is an insult to our officers and our staff who work really hard. And yes, their capacity may be limited, but one thing that I always asked when I was in the Cabinet was, do we have the capacity? And every time I asked that, the response was, yes, we do. Do we have the skill sets? Maybe not. Do the skill sets exist out there? Yes, they do. Can we incorporate them into our organisation? I believe we can. And it's just such a shame that this administration is taking such a negative view to the ability of this council to deliver projects, that we are now turning our backs on the opportunity for us to gain an income over this 30 or 40 year period. I don't even know why this is in part 2, these numbers, because there's nothing that isn't really commercially sensitive. I'd like to have seen a direct comparison with the PPA and the lease terms, but it's not there. So you can't compare like for like. I think it's an appalling situation for us to be in. And I'm really disappointed that this Cabinet are about to recommend this, this scheme to be turned into a lease arrangement. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor. I know that Councillor Billings and Councillor Lewis are keen to respond to some of the points that have been made. Before I move over to Councillor Billings, is there anybody else within the Cabinet who wishes to say anything else? Councillor Billings.
Thank you, Chair. Let me try and go through the points that councillors have just raised. A point was made about the availability of the second field, which is a reference to the area required for mitigation to be available for other things. As I sought to set out in my seconding originally, that's a misunderstanding of the planning application that's been submitted. The mitigation land is not available for other things if that other use takes away from its requirement to be grazed or managed or otherwise in a functional way that achieves the mitigation that's been described in the landscape and ecological management plan that forms part of the approved planning consent. Now, councillors behind me might not like that, they might huff and puff, but this was a planning permission that was submitted under the previous administration. Now, it is not possible to deliver the development side and then separate off the mitigation side and treat that totally separate. If that was possible, house builders all across the country would already be doing that. That's not the way the system works. And so when I spoke earlier, I tried to say that it might be possible, it hopefully is possible, to get archery to work on that mitigation land. But the developer of the solar farm needs to have access for all of that mitigation land. They need to have the ability to deliver the mitigation in that prescribed area, and any subsequent use that's meant to work alongside that mitigation can't detract from the functional outcome. In relation to the community development, dividend rather, it was always somewhat frustrating to myself at the time as a spokesperson for the Churston, Gampton, Broadsands, Hook Hills area to see the solar farm in Barton and Watcombe, the area of the previous leader of the council, have a community dividend championed for it. I don't ever recall having a community dividend attached to the Brokenbury scheme, and I may be mistaken on this. I'm sure councillors can correct me in due course, but I've certainly seen it advertised in relation to the Nightingale one. I've not seen it in relation to the Brokenbury one. In relation to risk, reference was made to the PPA agreement and what are projections from officers. The difficulty is, in relation to this, that electricity has different values at different times of day. That's very clear from, for example, overnight tariffs available to residential consumers from OVO Energy, who can get, you would pay about 30p per kilowatt during the day, you would pay around 5 or 6p over an evening. And the time of day is quite important. And if you were South West Water seeking to have clarity over your forward costs, you would be entering into contracts with an electricity provider over a long term and future time period. If we are now going to, as a council, sell electricity to South West Water, we need to guarantee the power at various different times, and that would require a situation where it's entirely on us as to whether this equipment goes down or not. Now, councillors might take the view that the council's well placed to deal with those sorts of risks. Equally, it's not clear to me from our performance in terms of bringing forward some other capital projects. That's one I necessarily want to expose our residents to. Now, that could have been sidestepped, perhaps, if an agreement had been made with South West Water at a very early stage, before any funds had been committed on this, which is the reason, Mr. Chairman, for my somewhat negative seconding of this. I think we could have been in a different situation which might have delivered a better outcome. But we are where we are. This is the best option on the table to us now, given the political choices that were made by the previous administration. And then I just want to talk in relation a little bit in regards to the timescales of this. There's been a lot of work that our officers have put in to try to deliver the solar farm. That's why there's been, we are where we are in terms of the period of the administration, and it's just shown and come clear that this is the best option on the table, and the council's looked at it diligently, and this is why I'm delighted to second this, and we'll pass over. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much. To finally wrap up, Councillor Lewis.
Thank you very much, Chairman. Councillor Long said that I believe that it's not the job of the council to build solar farms. And I don't think it is. I think we have a core function here. And if we can get the private sector to come in and do it, as South West Water will, so much the better. He then criticises us for housing. I think we're doing more for housing. Councillor Timon and others, we've actually got a dedicated housing officer now with a team. We've got hotels to homes, we've got other schemes going forward. So that is not the case. There's no evidence to show that. He talks about financial. It's not all about financial. It's also about the risk and other actions that would take place if we were actually building and running the solar farm, as Councillor Billings has said. Risks. Under your administration, you have had a number of projects going forward. The Premier Inn, where we, a disaster. Where Wicks, a disaster. Lymington Road. These are all risks that, the solar farm, in a lesser extent, could actually come back to bite us, as I said in my speech. Those are projects that you came forward in your 4 years, which proved not to be as they were with the business case. As far as the archery, Brixham Archery is concerned, that is contact has been given to South West Water for them to contact Brixham Archery to see if a deal can be done. So we are working towards that to see if there is an outcome. And again, as Councillor Billings says, the unit price has not been set. So until that is set, it's very difficult to have a business case going forward. We know that we will get the rent for that. We know that we will get the costs of what we spent with the planning, etc. So the risk to the council is very low. But the good news, Mr. Chairman, is that we will get a solar park on that field, which will be supported by South West Water and will be encouraged by Torbay Council. And I think that's what we're here to do, is to bring in the private sector to deliver. And that's what the good people of Torbay want. They'd much rather that it comes in at cost and delivers for the people. So I'm very happy, as I said at the beginning, to propose this, and I think it is the right way forward. We've heard from our finance director, who has agreed that this is the best way forward. Therefore, I hope we will get full support from the Cabinet. Thank you.
Thank you indeed, Councillor, and thank you to all councillors who have taken part in this item. I would remind the Cabinet that this is a recommendation that will be ultimately decided by Council. So this is Cabinet's recommendation to Council as drafted. My apologies.
So it's part and part, Chairman. So in terms of rescinding the decision regarding the prudential borrowing, that is what will go through to full council.
Thank you. Thank you for that clarification. And for reference, that is the £2.75 million that Council, if Council agree with Cabinet, that Council will not have to find. And I think that's basically what we've been talking about for the last 40 minutes or so. So all those in favour, please indicate.
Unanimous, Chair.
Thank you very much indeed. We move on to item 2 this evening, which is the Torbay Inclusion Strategy. Councillor Tranter.
Thank you, Chair. So we know that inequality exists within the Bay and that the life chances between residents vary greatly. Torbay is one of the most deprived local authority areas in England. We need to do all that we can to try and remedy this and support people wherever possible to ensure that people have equal life chances. For us, embedding inclusion into council activity is one of the many ways to achieve this. Under the Equality Act, the council is subject to the public sector equality duty, which means that we need to give due regard to equality. The general duty requires us to eliminate unlawful discrimination, harassment, victimisation, and other conduct prohibited by the Act, advance equality of opportunity between people who share a protected characteristic and those who do not, and foster good relations between people who share a protected characteristic and people who do not. Under our public sector equality duty, we must publish one or more equality objectives every 4 years. Following a consultation, we last set our equality objectives in August 21. The inclusion strategy aims to holistically bring together the council's work on inclusion and its equality objectives into one overarching document to support the council to meet its public sector equality duty. It also aims to respond to the feedback from the council's local government association, Corporate Peer Challenge, which emphasised the need for more focused strategic inclusion activity. In addition, the strategy builds upon the work of the Racism Review and aims to foster a shared commitment to inclusion within the council. It also links across and supports work such as the Child-Friendly Torbay, the Carers Strategy, Age-Friendly and the Big Plan and others. The strategy has been guided by the LGA's Equality Framework for local government and is flexible enough to meet the needs of different departments and communities. I propose, as written in the covering report, that Cabinet recommends to Council that the list of policy framework documents set out in Torbay Council's constitution be updated to include the inclusion strategy for Torbay Council 25 to 30 and, subject to number 1 above, the inclusion strategy for Torbay 25-2030 action plan as set out in Appendix 2 to be submitted to the submitted report be approved. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. I understand that Councillor Tyerman will second this item.
Yes, Chairman, I'm happy to second that. And I feel after that introduction I've got little to add. But I think what I would like to say is that I think it's very important that the Council does what's said in this strategy. But I think it's not only for what the Council does, it's to set an example to the rest of Torbay, to businesses in Torbay, about how an organisation, a large organisation, any organisation, should act in today's world. And I think that what is set out in this strategy is something for us to follow, but also something for us to promote to the wider community. So I'm happy to second that. And look forward to speaking at Council about it.
Thank you very much indeed. I'm going to move across to our Director of Corporate Services, Matthew Fairclough Kay, if there's anything else that you wish to add.
Thank you, Chair. It's another strategy and action plan, so the only thing I wanted to do was highlight what we have been doing in the period that's led up to this point. So we first wrote our draft equality objectives about 3 years ago, maybe 3.5 years ago now. Between then and now, we've just redrafted them. We've worked with our partners to deliver the health and wellbeing strategy for Torbay, where it helps inform future care and ensures that we respond to areas of greatest need. We've also launched the Multiple Complex Needs Alliance. Clearly, we've brought in some more resource to ensure that we can continue to deliver. we've got our new people strategy, which is a very significant document, making sure that we have the right workforce to deliver for our residents. And we've, along with that, reviewed our inclusion training offer and how we commission various other related learning and development opportunities. And we've also looked at all our policies and our initiatives to make sure that our staff can feel safe at work and carry out their duties without feeling bullied or discriminated against. And of course, we've now developed this new strategy and the associated action plan so that we can continue the good work in this vital area. That's the only thing I wanted to add, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. The right of reply sits with the Shadow Cabinet, who is Councillor Madison, who's not here this evening. So I will offer it across to Councillor Cowell in the first instance, if you have anything, sir.
I thought it was Councillor Douglas Dunbar who was...
Okay, in which case my information on my page is wrong, and Councillor Douglas Dunbar is in the room. My apologies, Councillor Douglas Dunbar. We can't hear you. I think you are muted. I think you're still...
Oh.
That's better.
Thank you. It was just that I couldn't unmute myself. I was trying. Thank you very much, Chair. Yes, I've looked at this strategy. My only feeling is that well, I would really quite like to know what mechanism is going to be put in place to ensure that it is read by everyone, that it is understood as well, because it is so easy in this day and age to say the wrong, use the wrong narrative. So that is the only real thing. It's about monitoring it and making sure that everyone across the council get to read it, rather than it just sitting on the shelf. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. Councillor Long.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I just wanted to welcome this report here this evening. It's a very welcome initiative. And I just wanted, the only slight question mark I had was on the equality impact assessment part of the report. There was lots of references to no differential impact or no negative impact, and I would have thought there would have been positive impacts as a result of this report. So I just share that for what it's worth. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. It's unusual to see a report with a plus VE, so absolutely accepted that there will be a positive outcome there. And I think, certainly from my perspective, and I apologise for jumping in front of Councillor Tranter, but certainly from to answer Councillor Douglas Dunbar directly, certainly all of we spoke about continuous training, continuous development. That's kind of what we are all committed to try to make lots of the things that we have put in place in the council actually work. Councillor Tranter, anything else that you wish to conclude with before we move to the vote?
Just that I absolutely agree with Councillor Swithin that it should be absolutely making a positive impact. That's the whole point of it. And that this policy will be embedded in everything that we do, or should be embedded in everything that we do. So absolutely, it should be read and everybody should be very well aware of it.
Thank you very much indeed, in which case the recommendation for your reference is that this Cabinet recommends to Council 1 that the list of policy framework documents set out in Torbay Council's constitution be updated to include the inclusion strategy for Torbay 25 to 30, and subject to 1 above, the inclusion strategy for Torbay for 25-30 action plan as set out in Appendix 2 to the submitted report be approved. All those in favour, please indicate.
Unanimous, Chair.
Thank you very much indeed. Only 2 items on this evening's agenda. So at 6:14, This meeting is closed. Thank you very much.